Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Wherever you are, you're watching another episode of Speedway Nostalgia. I'm Josh,
I'm Caleb.
and we are bringing you the 2001 EA Sports 500, one that's actually a pretty special race to me. This one takes me way back. I was 15 years old. I spent my whole life telling everybody how I was 14 years old, but I was actually 15 during this time. This was my transition year of 14 to 15. My birthday's in August, and I turned 15 in August. This race was in October. October 2001. Do you actually have the actual date?
October 1st.
Before we jump right into it, though, we're going to go over some pretty cool diecasts here. Do you have any info on these?
Besides my opinion on it, just how cool the diecast is. I love how the Coca-Cola polar bears on the hood of it. Obviously, I always like Tony Stewart's paint schemes. Teammates, Joe Gibbs' teammates, both of the cars have the polar bear Coca-Cola thing on the hood, so that's kind of a cool thing for you.
These came from, well, they were made by Action Sports, but these were actually got from Motorsport Auction, brought to you by Circle B Diecast. Again, hashtag not sponsored. But here's another special addition to this one. This is the race version of our winner of that race, Dale Earnhardt Jr. He was one of the Noble Fives. This was when they were all running the American flag on the trunk of the car. This was from the September 11th attacks. And just what I love about these diecasts is just how detailed they are. I mean, anybody who's ever been a diecast collector knows just how incredible these diecasts are. I mean, the detail. I mean, the plug wires and everything in these things, fuel cells, everything is so detailed. But enough plugging. And again, this is the race version. Of course, all your marks and everything's in the race. And I love race versions. But what was you looking forward to watching the race? I know that we've talked about it a lot over the years, but actually sitting down watching the race in a whole, what'd you think?
I loved it. Just watching the racing at a super speedway from then compared to now is just amazing. So I definitely love that style of racing at a super speedway more. So just cool and how great of a run Dale Jr. had during that race.
And that was a thing too. And going back and watching it just a few minutes ago, I remember how dominating Junior was. And back then to have a powerful car at a super speedway isn't a lot like it is today. You could actually show some muscle at a super speedway, but this was the first year where they made a lot of rule changes at the super speedways. A lot of this came from a lot of changes NASCAR was making from Dale Earnhardt's death, a lot of different safety measures that they were trying to do, but also trying to make things more exciting for the fans. And again, going back and watching, I didn't realize just how much the drivers hated the track.
Yeah, those before the pre-race interviews and post-race interviews, just how disappointed and how they just wish NASCAR could have done something different about it. But I don't know. It was fun for me to watch.
They spent a lot of time complaining about this track, and like they do now. I mean, it's Russian roulette when you actually go and race there. To me, as a fan, I still think not only back then, which we'll go to the differences between Talladega then and Talladega now. You know, again, back then you could actually show some muscle, and Dale Jr. was flexing it left and right. And the amazing ending to the race, it was just built up over that final 20 laps. It was building up to something is going to happen here. We just didn't know what. And I remember because I was there. And guys, this is what was so incredible about that race. It was the first race that I ever attended in person. It was a gift that my dad had got me. And a lot of you who have followed me on Instagram know how special Talladega is to me with my background with my dad, how special NASCAR is to me because of the relationship and the bond it created with my dad and I. And being able to go back and watch this race, knowing that it was me and my dad there. We was in a OV Hill South, which is still named that to this day, right there in the tri-oval. We was third row up, and being able to go back and just relive that and remember some of the feelings, especially when certain things was going on. When Dale Jr. first took the lead early on in the race and how that place erupted. And even on the camera, you can hear it.
Yeah, you can hear him just screaming.
When he first took the lead, I mean, that place, exploded. It was insane. And I remember being there and I remember that feeling, being so excited. I had my first Dale Jr. hat that I'd ever got. My dad actually got for me at the souvenir haulers, which has really changed over the years to how the souvenir haulers are. But it was a gray hat with the number 8 on it. And I mean, of course, when Junior would come around, people take their hats off and just start waving it and all that. It was an incredible feeling, and being able to go back and I tell you, I miss my dad greatly. As most of you know, he passed away in 2023, right after we took our final Talladega trip just a couple months before, and that was his final race. And it was just it was a special time for me as a kid, and it was a special moment that I'll share for the rest of my life. Going into the race, what was going on in the world that year at that time? Anthrax was a big thing going on. The War on Terror was going on. Michael Jordan was playing for the Washington Wizards, and NASCAR was at Talladega Superspeedway for the EA Sports 500. Leading up to the race, there had been 16 winners up to that point for the year. And the week previously, Ricky Craven had beat Dale Jarrett in a great battle at Martinsville. It was Ricky Craven's first NASCAR Winston Cup win. And he also had a huge wreck several years before at Talladega that really put him on the shelf and really changed his dynamic of racing. And that's what was going on leading up to this point. What do you have?
Well, going back about Ricky Craven, he said this race really is it's kind of just a mental game the whole time. Physical racing, like Martinsville, he won the week before. Martinsville, you're beating, banging everywhere. But he said the race is very emotional, very mental. You got to think about what you're doing, use some strategy. But I mean, as a driver, I can see why in the race car, your mind is just going through a million things, like what could happen, what move do I need to make. Your spotter's talking to you. It's just, I completely agree with Ricky Craven on what he said about that.
It's definitely, I think one of the words he said was it's a head game, and it is. It's emotional. He said that 1 minute you're driving around the track and you're shaking your fist at one driver, and then the next lap you're waving, saying thank you, and then the lap after that you're back to shaking your fist at them. It's so much back and forth. It's an emotional roller coaster ride. But for the most part, and this is what a lot of the drivers hated about it, is it's a lot of just sitting there driving. It's not a very physical race. A lot of them refer to it as boring. Whereas NASCAR's outtake and what a lot of your announcers was talking about was how it may be boring for the drivers, but it was definitely entertaining for the fans. And of course, I'm biased to for the rest of my life. That will always be my favorite race that I've ever attended. That will go down as my favorite race in NASCAR history for me personally. But although I'm biased, if you go back and watch that race was fun to watch. It had its slow moments, but that last 20 laps when everybody kept saying it was go time, it was really fun to watch. And again, with 30 laps to go or something like that, Dale Jr. taking that last pit stop. And I remember being there. I remember watching that pit stop because Michael Waltrip stayed out, and I thought, why did he pit? And I think, which of course, teammates could communicate car to car back then. I'm pretty sure Michael Waltrip was telling him, hey, I don't know if I can finish because Michael Waltrip is having overheating issues. But I remember when Junior took to pit road as a kid, I'm just like freaking out. I'm like, why is he doing this? And of course, other drivers went with him, but with 30 to go and he made his way through the field, it reminded me so much of the year before when Dale Earnhardt came from 6th to 1st, which Junior had done that same thing earlier in the year at Daytona. And Junior had a lot to prove that day too, at Talladega. A lot of controversy going on behind the scenes and people saying things that they shouldn't and things like that. Also, the week before at Martinsville, had a little controversy with Kevin Harvick, which controversy seemed to follow him quite a bit. But this one was a true veteran with Bobby Hamilton, and they got into it really bad. And Kevin Harvick had basically just made a comment in the pre-race interview that he hadn't made contact with Bobby Hamilton. He didn't see the need to, or really did he want to. Bobby Hamilton, he said, you got this kid out here, he's trying to fill the shoes of Dale Earnhardt. And he also thinks he's Dale Earnhardt. And it was, of course, Richard Childress, which another issue happened later in the race that we'll talk about later. But Richard Childress, I remember going back looking at interviews back then. And Richard Childress, one thing you can say about him is he defends his drivers.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Richard Childress is a great dude. Like, I don't know. He's going to make the excuse whether or not the driver did do something wrong or whether another driver did something to his driver. But that's, I don't know, as a car owner, maybe you do your best to stand up for your drivers.
Did you take note on what the standings look like before the race?
The point standings? All I know for sure is Jeff Gordon was in the lead over Ricky Rudd by a ton. I cannot remember how many points he was over Ricky Rudd, but after the fact, he was 395 points over Ricky Rudd. But let's see here.
I know Dale Jr. was in 8th going into the race.
Mm-hmm.
Sterling Marlin was in 3rd.
Yeah.
Well, of course, we had qualifying, and you can't have a good race without qualifying. So, what was the qualifying results? Who was starting up front and going from 1st to 5th? Do you have that down?
Yeah. So, pole winner Stacy Compton is, I think, what was it, his second pole? Was it his second pole in his career?
Yes, the first one was Talladega the same year.
Yep. Driver Bobby Hamilton, 3rd. Sterling Marlin. What did you say?
No, Bobby Hamilton actually won the April race at Talladega. So not only was he running good here, qualifying 2nd, he also won in April of this same year at Talladega. Bobby Hamilton was, he was a force to be reckoned with at Talladega in 2001, especially this race.
I didn't realize how good he was at Talladega.
He had a great car that day.
3rd, Sterling Marlin. 4th, Johnny Benson. And 5th, Bill Elliott.
Bill Elliott starting in the top 5. And Johnny Benson, again, we covered him last week too. 2001 was a pretty strong year for Johnny Benson.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that first year that he took that Valvoline sponsorship. And I think he was really making a name for himself.
Yeah.
Valvoline was so always known for, being the home for Mark Martin and things like that. Johnny Benson really made a name for himself in that 2001 season in that car. Out of all the 43 drivers, you also had 5 Winston Noble winners. What was so cool, and Dale Jr. actually mentioned this on his podcast, the Dale Jr. Download. He absolutely hated this, but he had the rear spoiler was orange and the color was orange. He said that, and of course, so why they did that was to show the 5 drivers who was part of the Winston Noble Five. And I remember all these years looking back that I thought it was super cool. And I have spent the last 25 years trying to get my hands on this car. I just got it this year. I was super excited. I really wish I would have did a box opening for it or something like that, but I was trying not to get emotional and stuff like that, so I didn't really want to put it on camera. But this car in that race was so special to me because of what it meant to me. But going back and looking at it after I got this car and see it close up, and I went back and watched the race here recently too, that was pretty hideous. It completely botches the whole car.
It's kind of funny how NASCAR did that. I get the recognition of okay, here's your drivers going into this thing. But that is kind of funny that they would do that to the cars.
I think that also had a lot to do with Winston, obviously, and some of the people who are watching may be too young, like yourself. Winston was a tobacco company. It was owned by R.J. Reynolds, and it was the sponsor of NASCAR for several years. And that's what NASCAR was known for, is the Winston Cup. To this day, so many years later, I still struggle and I make a mistake. And instead of saying Cup Series or all the other series as it was, I still sometimes will refer to it as Winston Cup just out of habit. You raised a certain way and you think that, but the winner of the race, if you was part of the Winston Noble Five, you got $1 million bonus, and you was also teamed with a fan. So a fan got an opportunity, and I can't remember how it worked or how you signed up to be part of that. A lady was part with Dale Jr. and also the other drivers, but the person who's teamed with the driver, they get $1 million, and then the driver gets $1 million. Dale Earnhardt Jr. was one of them. Dale Jarrett was one of them. Kevin Harvick was one of them. Ricky Rudd and Rusty Wallace was your 5 Winston Noble drivers seeking that $1 million bonus. And of course, the big story this week at Talladega was the big story for several, the last couple of years, but they actually changed up. But it was restrictor plate racing. Yep. And that's what made Talladega and Daytona so fun, was the restrictor plates. And basically what that was is you have your carburetor and they take this square plate and they put it over, and there's 4 little holes. And the way those holes are positioned actually drops the speed of the car. It drops the power of the car, believe it or not, and you can actually go back and watch this. It drops at 300 horsepower, and it drops it by about 30 miles per hour. Those cars could have been running 200, 205, in some cases 208 miles an hour. And this restrictor plate brought that down significantly. and it brought the horsepower of the vehicles down. And that's, it basically made all the cars equal. And that's one of the things I fuss about now is with sorry, there was a fly that jumped on my camera there. I didn't want a fly to jump on the thing, and then y'all be really thinking it's a lot worse than what it already is. But I done forgot what I was saying. So right now, especially with the next gen car, you get out in clean air, you're good to go. And then you watch the race and all the cars are made equal. And here, none of the drivers was so used to the cars being equal. Sterling Marlin said it after the race is you take all these fast cars and your slow cars and you make them all equal. And now they're all bunched up together. And lap one, a guy that's in the rear of the field, by lap 5, he's up racing for the lead. And it takes all the fun out of it for the drivers. Where on the fan side of things, it actually makes it a lot more exciting and enjoyable. You have anything else to add to that?
I'm just kind of agreeing with him. I mean, I get like slowing down the cars for safety stuff, but I don't know. I think it's kind of cool to see those cars run that fast out there and just see the racing.
Well, so some of the drivers would disagree with you. Jeff Burton, his opinion is you can't have 40 cars running in a pack like that. Jeff Gordon, he says it's becoming a lot less fun racing at Talladega. And he also mentioned that it's becoming less fun just to be part of a restrictor plate race at all. Rusty Wallace, he says, I dread going there with the new rules. Rusty Wallace hates the new rule package going into this race. But going into the race, and without further ado, your announcers are Alan Bestwick, Vinnie Parsons, Wally Dallenbach. I personally enjoyed them. I did enjoy the Fox crew, but the NBC crew back then was awesome as well. Compared to what you see now, what did you think of pre-race? Pre-race was awesome.
Oh, pre-race was amazing. Watching your commercials, I guess, seeing all the little NASCAR clips about the drivers and fans, it was really cool to see. I love pre-race to watch. Pre-race was amazing. It really entertaining.
And of course, our Bud Pole Award was Stacy Compton. What the cool thing about the Bud Pole Award? So it wasn't everybody gets in just by being a part of the NASCAR community. Clash, which back then was known as the Bud Shootout or the Budweiser Shootout, you had to win a pole the year before to qualify for that race.
Yeah.
Or you had to be a past winner or a past champion. There were guidelines that you had to meet, but one of them was be a pole winner. But yeah, you had the Bud Pole Award that went to Stacy Compton. This was also the first year that they had the out of bounds line. So this was your first year at Talladega where you could go out of bounds. You go below the yellow line, you improve your position from that yellow line, and it's a stop and go penalty, which at Talladega, you're going to go a lap down unless you get a caution to help you out.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The rule was kind of, I get it for sure. I mean, watching the 2000 race with Dale Earnhardt when he Jr. kind of went below that line. I mean, he was clearly done with when coming into turn 1. But I mean, I get it, the line, the rule for it. But yeah, that's what I have on that.
So Mark Martin going into this race, do you know how many wins he had at Talladega going into this race in 2001?
I don't.
I'll give you a hint. It was less than 3, but more than 1. That's correct. And then there was 2 drivers that this was their 50th Talladega start. Not 50th Cup Series start, but 50 years at Talladega. Or not 50 years, but 50 races at Talladega over the course of their career. Do you know what 2 drivers that was? Would have been their 50th?
I'm pretty sure one. Was it Ricky Rudd?
One was Ricky Rudd.
Man, what was the other one? I cannot remember the other one.
Well, let's just think of who we featured last week.
Bill Elliott.
Bill Elliott. It was both of their 50th Talladega starts. Another fun fact, Jimmy Spencer would end up playing a little role in this race. He was actually the first car to go out of the race. He was the 1994 winner. That's a name you don't really see up in the victory lane area as Jimmy Spencer. He was 1994 winner. 2 cars failed to qualify for the race. It was Dave Marcus and Rick Mast. And again, 2 other great drivers there that would have great careers in the last, those last couple of years. They were just kind of settling down. The fuel window was going to be 50 laps. And most of the cars could make it on the 50 laps. There was just one team that wasn't able to do that, and that was the Hendrick cars, and their fuel window was 46 to 48 laps. Green flag flies. Stacey Compton leads the first lap. And as we start watching this, I'm reminded of how what made Talladega so fun is it was unpredictable.
Oh yeah,
It
definitely.
was it literally was pack racing at its best. And sometimes they would go into single file. They get in
Yep.
single file and they'd get a row of 7 or 8 of them, and they would actually put some distance behind the pack behind them.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like what you see at Atlanta now.
Yeah,
You know,
that's exactly what it is, really.
Atlanta
Watching 'em,
reminds me a
yeah.
lot of what Talladega used to be. And watching that old surface that they were on
Yeah.
with all the lines and everything all over it, it was just cool. I loved it.
You had, like, with that race, you had room to move around and race each other. It wasn't like today where you're 4 wide for 50 laps and you're just, okay, if the leader makes a mistake or if 4 of us make a mistake leading the race, I mean, the pack's pretty much screwed. So, but yeah, like watching Dale Jr. make those last lap moves was really cool just to see how in order to take the lead back, he was able to move around and race them.
Well, and talking about spreading out like that, that's one thing that, like, Talladega back then, like, the track actually looked wider than it is now. It's
Yeah.
not, obviously, but it looked wider because of how they were positioned and how the racing is. You take how the racing is then and compare it to now, Talladega looks significantly smaller, and it's not. But it was just the way the races were run. And what I loved about the unpredictability is one lap they are single file and going, and then the next lap you do have guys splitting out 4 wide. And again, 1 minute what they were complaining about, you could be. It was almost like watching as a kid. I would watch the WWE Royal Rumble, and you watch a race at Talladega, and it actually, because the Royal Rumble was so unpredictable, what was going to happen the next second, or who was going to come out next, or who was going to get thrown over the top rope. You watch now, and I'm thinking to myself, Robert Presley could win this thing.
Robert Presley could win.
I mean, Caleb's favorite driver from the early 2000s, Robert Presley, and he could actually win this thing. That's how crazy and unpredictable super speedway racing was, especially Talladega. Daytona was the same way, but Talladega just brought that extra bit of energy with it. Lap 14, that's when Dale Jr. first took the lead, and that's when the place blew up.
You could hear it watching the race on TV.
Well, I remember being there in the stands, not only from the cars, but from the screaming. The stands would literally vibrate.
That's amazing.
They actually compared it. I was listening to news. I remember because my dad was a big talk radio guy, and we're leaving Talladega and we're driving and listening to the news. They said that at one point it was picking up on Richter scale.
Wow, that's crazy.
At one point, with all the screaming and all that the noise from the super speedway was picking up on the Richter scale. And they didn't say it was just from the cars. It was from the screaming from the crowd in the grandstands.
That just shows what fans were like back. Now, I mean, you hear fans get excited, especially at Talladega, but that just shows how much more excited they were for the race. And watching those last laps were
What'd you
pretty
think
cool.
of seeing the stands?
Packed out. Nothing like they are now. The stands were amazing. Obviously, they had the extra stands on the backstretch, but
Talladega was so big that right now you go to Talladega, you don't see grandstands on the back straightaway. They're gone. But not only was the front stretch grandstands packed out, not only was the infield packed out, but the stands on the back stretch completely packed out. That play, it was 160 plus thousand.
it's just amazing to think about.
And 60,000 of your best friends.
There you go. Yeah.
So throughout the race, you're going to have people, obviously things are happening, things like that. At lap 19, Sterling Marlin, or I'm sorry, lap 18, Sterling Marlin, he slows down significantly, and he had been running up front, and all of a sudden he just drops out. And then come to find out, he said it's part of a game plan. He came over the radio, and him and his crew chief had talked. He's going to try to stay out of it. Another driver doing that was also Tony Stewart. You didn't see Tony Stewart hear from Tony Stewart in that entire race up until 10 laps to go. I mean, he was in fact, other than showing him a couple of times for statistical reasons, Tony Stewart wasn't even a factor in the race.
Yeah, I mean, I think at one point they said he's been running last this entire race. But that's a great plan, I feel like. I mean, you're not really in it towards the beginning or even halfway. It's just what he did. He waited till the end. He saved his car, and it worked for sure.
And a lot of people are doing that now. In fact, Talladega not this last year, but the year before. That's what Denny Hamlin's game plan was, and it paid off for him pretty good.
And anytime he wanted to run up front, he would be there. You would see him.
It don't take a lot to run up front in Talladega.
No.
You just got to be able to weave through traffic. But back then, it was a little bit more tough to get up there. I mean,
But you could drive the car.
you could drive the car. You didn't have to rely on if the car behind you or in front of you is going to do something. Back then, you have two cars drafting. And so you have this car right here, and you have this car right here. You actually could use the car in front of you to pull in, and then you could kind of slingshot to get around them. But now, if you have two cars running like here, you can see that. If this car is pulling up behind them and they go for that slingshot, if there's not another car behind them, they ain't going nowhere. They're just getting hung out to dry. Mm-hmm. And that did happen in some back then too, but it wasn't as significant now to where you take one inch and you step out of line for just a moment. You're done. Yeah. I mean, you're going to the rear of the field within probably 100 yards, where back then you actually could slingshot a little bit and those factors were still there. Lap 19, Jimmy Spencer starts falling out of the race and he comes over the radio. He says something broke. He gives an interview after he's out of the race and he adds to the commentary of, this isn't racing. This isn't the racing I was brought up on. He states, it's boring racing. The cars are equal. They're so close together and they run hot. And he was saying that's what caused his issue is his car was running hot because of the pack racing, that they couldn't get any kind of fresh air or clean air. But he said, this ain't racing. And he said, it's boring and there's nothing to it. So let me ask you in the comments, are they right or are they wrong? Is Talladega fun to watch from a fan standpoint? And can you just see the argument from the driver standpoint? Are they right or wrong about it? You got to keep in mind too, I understand from a driver's perspective. I do. That I'm not a driver, nor have I ever been a driver, but from a driver's perspective, you're worried about safety. You're worried about agility. You're worried about strategy. But as a fan, it's a blast. As a fan, It's fun to watch. So and that's the thing, as a driver, you have to understand that you're involved in a spectator sport. Yes, you want to race and you love racing, but you're also happy when you're making millions off of what the fans are paying you to do. So I can also see it from that. And I might get a little controversy there, but I'm also speaking from a fan standpoint. I'm not speaking from a driver standpoint. Yeah. So I don't really have a right to make that argument. Mm-hmm. But I can also see where, yes, they need to understand they're choosing to entertain the fans, and the fans is what's making them all these millions of dollars. But do we have to risk their safety to do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is I was going to say, like, as a fan, it's so fun to watch. Like, I love watching, especially Talladega. Talladega is my favorite track. But yes, as a driver, you consider the fans and then you don't. It's like, do I want to go with fans or do I want to go with how I like racing? I mean, in some ways I agree with them, and in some ways it's like, man, I don't know.
I have to say I completely agree with them. I do. Like I said, I'm not a race car driver, and I can understand why they have to, quote, get over it. You chose to do that. But, I was in a career field where my life was on the line for a long time. Mm-hmm. And it was a matter of I chose to do it. But that didn't mean that I don't reserve the right to get to go home at the end of the day.
Yeah, true.
And these guys, their biggest concern was more of the safety. And in their case, they were saying it wasn't racing. They were saying this ain't even racing. There's nothing fun about it. It was boring to them, that it wasn't what they consider racing. But from a safety aspect, I think because, this week we're paying them $1 million, but next week we're having their funeral. And you were cheering because you were a fan. Well, now he's not there no more, so you can't cheer him no more. So I do. I agree with the safety aspect of it. I agree with taking care of yourself. Because if all your drivers are dying, then you have no sport. And all of a sudden, you go from being this great driver to now you're just an old, sweaty, farty memory that people talk about and do a documentary every now and then about. And what kind of life is that? So I get the argument, and I understand the argument. I actually get it from both sides. I really do. At 33, we get a little history there. Kevin Harvick and Dale Jr. are going to go 1 and 2. It's the first time at Talladega that you're going to see the Goodwrench car and the 8 car Unfortunately, it's not a number 3, but they're going to go 1 and 2 for a couple laps. Pretty insignificant, but if you're kind of watching for that kind of thing, it actually happened on lap 33. The announcers didn't even really talk hooked up for a minute, but it was kind of, you see that white GM Goodwrench car and you're just kind of wishing it was the black 3 GM Goodwrench car and watching, Dale Jr. and Dale Earnhardt battling it out at Talladega, a track that both of them were greatly successful at.
Mhm.
I spent my whole life thinking that was where Dale Jr. had most of his wins, but it wasn't. It was actually Richmond where Dale Jr. had most of his wins. Last
Yep.
Dodge to win at Talladega. Pop quiz. If you have it in the comments, if you're fixing to get the answer, but do you know who the last Dodge winner was and what year it was? The last time, up until this point, the last time a Mopar, a Dodge, went to victory lane in Talladega was what year?
I don't remember what year.
1976 by Dave Marcus, who actually failed to qualify for this race. Dave Marcus won in 1976. That was the last time Dodge went to victory lane in Talladega up to that point. Lap 46, you start getting the pit stops. Anything to take away from that?
Just watching pit stops, how much different pit stops were back then.
I think they're much more entertaining.
Much more entertaining, but I mean, you take somebody who doesn't really know NASCAR that well, man, what a terrible pit stop they had. But I will say pit stops are pretty entertaining just to see. And once again, especially at Talladega, how that all sorts out and stuff.
Yeah, because you almost have to definitely go as a group.
Yeah,
Talladega and
especially
Daytona.
you need a drafting partner to race.
And you start seeing that on the racetrack around this time. Bill Elliott and the number 9 Dodge Dealers UAW Dodge, and Casey Atwood in the number 19 Dodge Dealers UAW Dodge. The twin cars, as I always call them out there, they looked identical other than the 9 and the 19, but everything was still the same. And they start running together before the pit stops begin. They wanted to make sure that they had some type of drafting partner. And this is where the tables are going to turn for Kevin Harvick on this pit stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Harvick was running. I feel like he was pretty consistent in the field, and then he comes into his pit stop. It looked like, I don't know, brakes locked up or something.
He
But
locked the
comes
brakes
in
up.
sideways, and then they have to, get situated with the pit stop, and then it just goes downhill from there.
He had all 4 tires in the box, so they were able to complete the pit stop, but they pushed him back, and it cost him several seconds on pit road, which we all know even today, 1 or 2 seconds on pit road costs you big. And he ended up going a lap down in the race and never could get his lap back. He almost did after one of the cautions, the caution that he calls, which we'll get to here just a little bit. But Ricky Rudd, he made a statement about the race being emotional and talking about drivers, going back and forth. He made a comment. Also, the first caution that we're going to get is from Todd Bodine, who literally got put in the wall by Kevin Harvick. And you will never convince me after watching that wreck that Harvick did not do that on purpose.
Yeah, Harvick come to him, and obviously some people were like, well, was Harvick being pushed? And if you go back and watch it, he was not at all being pushed, which is kind of funny. That's one of those things Richard Childress was defending, was the 29 was being pushed. Yeah, Bodine definitely was not happy with Harvick after that, which I wouldn't be either. I mean,
That was the 14th and Seco car, that green car. I believe it was Ron Hornaday that was driving that car. Anyway, they go back and they watch several angles. He did not push Kevin Harvick, but you clearly see Kevin Harvick, and it wasn't a right hook, even though it appeared like what you would see as a right hook.
Mhm.
Todd Bodine makes a hard right turn right into the wall, hard hit.
Yeah, it destroyed his car.
And then it collects Elliott Sadler in the 21 car and then Casey Atwood in the 19 car. And basically, Kevin Harvick, he said he didn't mean to do it. It was an accident. He said that he got pushed by the 14. That was Richard Childress talking to the announcers, defending his driver. Of course, Childress said, yeah, well, he hates it. But during the pit stop, Kevin Harvick's pit stop, Larry Carter, Todd Bodine's crew chief, runs up to the car while they're in the middle of the pit stop. That'd get you suspended these days. Carter runs up to the car while the pit stop is going on,
which is risky.
Your pit crew is on the right-hand side of the car. He had a little bit more time back then because they actually had pilot notes instead of one. Sure. Harvick's parked. He's getting his car serviced. Standard pit stop. Larry Carter runs up. He starts pointing and he starts screaming and yelling something inside the car. Pit crew is coming back around and they're getting down. And it appears Larry Carter kicks one of the pit crew members, one of the tire changers. It literally looks like he kicks the tire, or he kicks the pit crew member or something as he walks away, and you just see him walk off into the sunset. But it was pretty comical there because Kevin Harvick, when he was a young driver, he was a hothead. I think he would actually go back and say that now. I believe in his podcast he's mentioned that several times. He did a lot of stupid stuff, and he made a career out of that. The lap 134, another caution is going to come out. It was a debris caution, but they come down pit road, and at this point, it's going to be a fuel mileage race. So now they start talking about fuel mileage, and fuel mileage is going to be the factor that's going to determine the 2001 EA Sports 500. You got 40 to go. Jerry Nadeau spins. He's exiting turn 2, and he just had something broke. He didn't collect nobody. He just goes spinning down the back straightaway. 33 to go. So when Jerry Nadeau wrecks, they have the last pit stop of the day. This was when, as a kid, I was purely amazed because this is when I've told you this story so many times. Dale Jr. pulls up to his pit stall, and I'm watching this like a hawk because I am shocked that he went to pit road. Now, Michael Waltrip, he's complaining about his car is getting hot, and why he actually chose not to pit when everybody else did was he was going to be out front, and his car was actually cooling down. The water temperature is cooling down because he was in that clean air, and it was able to cool his engine, and he wasn't overheating. So he stayed out, and he knew that he could make it on fuel. I think he was still one lap ahead on fuel, so he was fine. Dale Jr. pulls into his pit stall, and I swear the gas man never stopped. And back then you actually had two gas men. You had the gas guy holding one of those awesome 76 racing fuel gas cans.
Oh, yeah.
And then you had a catch can man that would stand on the back. That way any overflow would just go right into this little can. Mm-hmm. So you actually had two guys working right there together. Junior's car never stopped, and they timed that perfect because you can't service the car. One wheel is outside of the box, and the pit crew cannot step outside of the box. The gas man runs up. He's ready. He jumps. He gets right on that car. Just a couple squirts. That's all he needed was just another lap or two.
Yep.
The car never freaking stops.
Which is amazing.
And he just keeps going. And I remember as a kid, I thought, whoa. Like I think it was
nothing to say.
Well, I want to say it was maybe a second pit stop, which was unheard of back then.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the pit crew member never stopped moving. The car didn't stop.
That's
and it
awesome.
was all. But I remember watching that. 27 to go, Michael Waltrip starts falling to the back of the field. Dale Jr. now starts getting other drafting partners. Bobby Labonte's back up in the mix. You also had Sterling Marlin up there in the mix. Yep. Johnny Benson's up there in the mix. Jeff Burton, who had actually been up front most of the day working with Dale Jr. Him and Dale Jr. worked together quite a bit during the race. Several times during the race, Jr.'s giving him the wave, telling him, come on, man, come on. Stand with him. And, of course, Bobby Hamilton, who was very successful in the April race. Bobby Hamilton was up front.
Mm-hmm. He was really consistent in this race, just on and off leading, go back in the pack. You would eventually see him back in the mix.
His car was so good that at one point he goes high, and for some reason his car was not performing high. And that's how Bobby Labonte ended up actually taking the lead from him, but he could not run high. Well, at one point, because a lot of people were saying how they knew how good he was, if he would split off by himself, nobody'd go with him. They wanted him at the back of the field because a lot of drivers are saying Bobby Hamilton was going to be hard to beat at this race, which again, as any casual fan who may not even know who Bobby Hamilton was, as a regular, consistent fan, I loved seeing it because seeing Bobby Hamilton perform at that level, and Bobby Hamilton, unfortunately, no longer with us, it was just super cool being able to see him be so successful at that race. And it wasn't just a matter of he's getting lucky because you get lucky at Talladega.
No, he was
battling.
Yeah, he was really doing good in that race.
And then comes 10 laps to go. And out of nowhere, like a thief in the night, like the Dark Knight Batman himself, Tony Stewart in the twin car of Bobby Labonte with the Coca-Cola polar bear shows up
for the lead
out of nowhere. And coming down to the last 2 laps, you got 2 laps to go. Bobby Labonte's leading. Dale Jr. is right behind him. They're battling it out. Bobby Hamilton's playing a factor. Jeff Burton is playing a huge factor. And all the announcers are saying, Junior's still ahead, or Junior's trying to make a move. And the announcers are saying, if Junior moves, Stewart's going to go with Labonte. And here comes the last lap. Labonte's leading, and Junior makes his move, and Stewart does not follow Labonte.
Which was shocking. I mean, everybody was probably, what are you doing? But then again, I mean, what could come on top of it? Like, it was, Stewart was, that was really cool watching him come
It
back.
was a cool move of the race, but Stewart follows Junior. Junior takes the lead, and in comes on the outside Bobby Hamilton trying to make a move on Bobby Labonte. Bobby Labonte goes low trying to block him, and in typical super speedway fashion, Bobby Labonte gets left hooked, goes into the wall, and Johnny Benson, who also was having a great day, was running third actually for several laps, gets a hold of it, and the hit that he took.
Oh my goodness, right into the outside wall. Like, I think it was running the bottom line.
He was running bottom.
And just hooked right into the wall. And watching the in-car camera was pretty crazy.
When he made contact with the wall, it was showing his speed at 170 miles an hour. So 170 miles an hour, and I mean, you just basically went from 170 to reverse in a matter of a tenth of a second.
Yeah, that's unbelievable to think about.
And I mean, I've heard drivers talk about how it feels like a baseball bat just someone clobbers you with it. But coming around, Tony Stewart and Jeff Burton start battling for second, which is all Dale Jr. needed to see. They start pulling back, and he starts pulling away at a super speedway.
Mm-hmm.
And Dale Jr. goes on to win the EA Sports 500, followed by Tony Stewart and Jeff Burton. After the race, Tony Stewart, who was also known for voicing his opinions, said he was pretty shook up and frustrated at the situation with Bobby Labonte. Not mad at Bobby Labonte, but the fact that Bobby Labonte wrecked the way he did, and that's his teammate. And he declined to interview because he was so frustrated. So he was happy with the finish, but he didn't agree with the way NASCAR was handling things. This was also the first week that NASCAR mandated the Hans device, the head neck restraint. And Tony Stewart was very outspoken about how he didn't agree with it, and he didn't think that it should be required. But he declined to interview. Jeff Burton, he was happy about the finish. He said that earlier in the race, he helped Dale Jr. out, and then a little later in the race, Dale Jr. helped him out. So he said it was just a way to return the favor, how he stayed working with him the whole time. And my favorite interview of the whole race was not Dale Jr., even though we'll get to his interview, but it was Sterling Martin.
Oh, man, that was a great interview. I loved it.
You just got to fix it.
That's all you got to do.
You got to fix it. They need to fix it. They ain't going to. They need to fix it.
Sterling Martin.
I don't know why they don't want to fix it. But I guess we'll just go Daytona and they won't fix it. We'll just start wrecking them again.
Thanks, Sterling.
It was a great interview. I enjoyed it. But Dale Jr., he gets out of the car. He jumps from 8th to 6th in the points. Jeff Gordon finished 7th in the race. He actually made it through the pile up. But Bobby Hamilton, not so lucky, but Bobby Hamilton still come out with a good finish. And he talked about in his race, his interview. And that's another thing about these interviews. They were so much more respectful.
Respectful, and they had personality in it. Like,
yes,
they're fun to watch. It was kind of a thing that you look forward to.
Compare it to now. What's most drivers' favorite word now when they get interviewed?
Yeah.
That's exactly. Yeah. And so
yeah, we ran our race. Thanks for Earnhardt Motorsports. All our sponsors. Yeah, we're going next week.
But back then they showed respect for each other. Bobby Hamilton talking about, and Bobby Labonte come down on him. I mean, Bobby Labonte cost Bobby Hamilton a good finish. He talks about, he come down low to block me like he should. That's how Bobby Hamilton worded that. And then he said, all I see is just a bunch of smoke, and then he disappears, and I look in my rear view and he's upside down. He said, I was worried about him. I actually come back around the track, stopped to check on him, make sure he's all right. Drivers had personality back then, and they cared about each other, and it wasn't all just about emotion. It was about, hey, it's a sport and we're in this together. Dale Jr., who had the Castaway Wilson volleyball on his, actually on this race, it was on his pit box, but that ball was introduced at Dover earlier in the year. I'm sure we'll cover it sometime. It was Dale Jr.'s win at Dover, which was the very first NASCAR race after the September 11th attacks. and Dale Jr. won that race. But he gets out, he's excited. He said, I didn't want to be too aggressive, but heck, everybody else was. So talked about racing aggressively, and he talked about the Winston Noble Five. But the first words that came out of his mouth, which was a shot at Jimmy Spencer, by the way, he said, "Well, I guess we just had to go out there and show him that it wasn't no fix at Daytona." Because after his win at Daytona, Jimmy Spencer spat it off and made a comment stating that the race was fixed to make Dale Jr. win, and there was just a big conspiracy behind it that they wanted Dale Jr. to win because that was the first race at Daytona after Dale Earnhardt's death.
Which you wouldn't think after what happened, a driver would even say that.
Well, you just got to know Jimmy Spencer back in the day. He has since apologized for that, and he's made several interviews where he didn't mean that. He was frustrated in his career. I mean, he's even talked to Dale Jr. on Dale Jr.'s show about that. And Jimmy Spencer, he was another one who just voiced his opinion a lot and things like that. I can't wait to cover him and Kurt Busch in their fight. That was, I mean, they almost got legal actions brought on it. So it was pretty entertaining and pretty fun. But as this race was too, and he said, "So is Wilson coming back with you?" He said, "Yeah, Wilson coming with me on the car, on the bike. I'm going in the car." Dale Jr., he said that he wanted to make sure he got a top 10 in points, and that's what he was going for, was a top 10 in points, because he wanted to be able to, say his piece with his dad and things like that. Leaving the race, Jeff Gordon, who finished 7th, increased his lead by an extra 58 points. I think it was what it was, an extra 58 points, but he was well into the 400-point lead over, I want to say it was Ricky Rudd. Ricky Rudd was in second in points at that point. And he said in his interview, he felt good just surviving at Talladega, which I think that's where everybody else.
Yeah, that's what every driver says.
But hey, listen, we're looking forward to more content. We're hoping to step it up even more. We just want to get 1% better each week we do this. Hopefully you like the new setup, a little bit of different background match, and hopefully one day we'll be able to bring y'all some really cool action. But until then, go check out motorsportauctions.com or motorsport.com. Again, it's not a plug because I'm not sponsored, but I do like them. Their customer service was actually really great to me, so that's why I'm plugging them, is because they were super, super nice and helpful on a car that got messed up before Christmas. And of course, I love these twin cars. These twin cars are just awesome.
Yeah, they look great.
And I don't know. This was when, again, I'm biased, but this was when I loved the way NASCAR was going. And I think the statistics speak for themselves. You couldn't find an empty seat. They were making Hollywood movies, of course, video games, but that's with any sport. But NASCAR was at its peak during this time, and these cars were just amazing. These cars, I loved the cars in that era. I think they were great, and NASCAR was at its peak in this time. Anything that you want to follow up before we start landing the plane here?
That's it. That's all I got.
Well, if that's all you got, he ain't got nothing else to say. I'm going to say that he's just like the new age drivers with no personality and nothing to say. And I'm like one of the drivers back 2001 who probably says too much and talks too much and you can't understand a word I'm saying because I'm saying it so fast. And I want to thank all of our sponsors, Budweiser, Interstate Batteries, the Home Depot, Gen 4 car, Gen 3 car, Gen 2 car, Next Gen car, NBNA, Husky Tools, Home Depot again, because that's just why I'm repeating myself now. Time to rail, put a half around waste mail, and I tell them make sure it's all clean and hang some good fenders on that something good. Well, until next week, you be good,
Be better.
and you be best. You're watching Speedway Nostalgia. We'll catch you next week.
See ya.